The 20th and 21st centuries have witnessed a surge in violence, often targeting civilians and symbols of authority. From the jungles of Vietnam to the streets of Belfast, the world has grappled with the complexities of conflict. Two terms frequently dominate these discussions: insurgency and terrorism. While often used interchangeably, crucial distinctions exist between these forms of violence. Understanding these differences is paramount for effective policymaking, conflict resolution, and ensuring international security. This video delves into the nuances of insurgency and terrorism, examining their definitions, aims, methods, and the often blurred lines that bind them. Insurgency, in its essence, is a struggle for power. It is a protracted armed conflict waged by non-state actors against a ruling government or external force. Insurgents employ a combination of guerrilla warfare, political mobilization, and propaganda to undermine the legitimacy of the ruling power and establish their own dominance. Their objective is not merely to disrupt, but to seize control, often aiming to establish an alternative political or social order. A prime example is the Viet Minh, who fought against French colonial rule in Vietnam. They combined guerrilla tactics with widespread popular support to undermine French authority, culminating in their victory at Dien Bien Phu. Their aim was not simply to inflict casualties, but to liberate Vietnam and establish an independent government. The Irish Republican Army, or IRA, offers another example. Their decades-long campaign against British rule in Northern Ireland combined armed attacks with political activism. Their objective was to force British withdrawal and achieve a united Ireland. These examples highlight the core elements of insurgency, a protracted struggle for political control, utilizing a combination of violence and popular support. Terrorism, unlike insurgency, is defined by its methods and targets. It is the deliberate use of violence against civilians or non-combatants to create fear and achieve political goals. Terrorists aim to sow terror among the populace, hoping to pressure governments into conceding to their demands. The randomness and brutality of their attacks are intended to generate a climate of fear disproportionate to the actual damage inflicted. The Red Army faction in Germany exemplifies this approach. Active in the 1970s and 80s, the faction sought to overthrow the West German government through a campaign of bombings, assassinations, and kidnappings. Their targets were often symbolic figures of authority, such as politicians, judges, and business leaders. Their goal was not to seize territory or engage in open warfare, but to destabilize the state through fear and intimidation. Similarly, the Basque separatist group ETA in Spain employed a campaign of bombings and assassinations targeting Spanish government officials and civilians. Their objective was to create a climate of fear and force the Spanish government to concede to their demands for Basque independence. These cases highlight the defining features of terrorism: the deliberate targeting of civilians and the use of fear as a weapon to achieve political change. The distinction between insurgency and terrorism, while clear in theory, can become blurred in practice. Many groups employ tactics that fall under both categories, making definitive categorization challenging. This blurring arises because both insurgency and terrorism are inherently political phenomena, driven by a desire for political change. For instance, an insurgent group primarily focused on territorial control might resort to terrorist tactics like suicide bombings to instill fear and undermine government legitimacy. Conversely, a terrorist organization might adopt insurgent tactics, attempting to establish control over a specific region or population. The complexities of conflict often lead to a convergence of methods, making clear-cut categorization elusive. The challenge lies in differentiating between the primary objectives and methods of a group. Is their principal goal to overthrow the government and establish control, or to incite terror and force concessions? The answer often lies in analyzing their overall strategy, targets, and the broader political context. One crucial differentiator between insurgency and terrorism can be the scale and nature of military action. Insurgencies, by their very nature, involve sustained military campaigns. They aim to establish control over territory and engage government forces directly, often striving to hold and govern areas under their influence. The Viet Minh's struggle against the French, for instance, involved large-scale battles and the establishment of base areas in the Vietnamese countryside. This sustained military campaign was central to their strategy of undermining French control and eventually achieving independence. In contrast, terrorist groups typically avoid direct confrontations with superior military forces. Their operations are often designed for maximum impact with minimal engagement. They rely on surprise attacks, assassinations, and bombings to achieve their objectives. While they may engage in limited tactical engagements, their strategy rarely revolves around holding territory or engaging in traditional warfare. The labels of insurgent and terrorist carry significant political weight. Governments, international organizations, and the media wield these terms with specific intentions, shaping public perception and influencing policy decisions. Branding a group as terrorist often delegitimizes their cause in the eyes of the international community, leading to sanctions, military intervention, and a refusal to engage in dialogue. Conversely, labeling a group as insurgents can sometimes be perceived as affording them a degree of legitimacy, implying a level of popular support and a struggle for political control. This distinction has a profound impact on how conflicts are perceived and addressed. The decision to label a group often reflects pre-existing political biases and interests. It is crucial to recognize the power dynamics at play and critically assess the motivations behind these labels. Understanding the political implications of these terms is essential for navigating the complexities of modern conflict and formulating effective strategies for peace and security. The distinction between insurgency and terrorism is not merely academic. It has real-world implications for conflict resolution, counter-terrorism strategies, and international law. While the lines between these two forms of violence can be blurred, understanding their fundamental differences is crucial. Both pose significant threats to global security, but require different approaches for effective countermeasures. By recognizing the nuances of each, we can move towards more informed policy decisions, fostering greater understanding and promoting peace in a world grappling with complex and evolving forms of conflict. Failure to grasp these distinctions risks misinterpreting the nature of conflicts, potentially exacerbating violence and undermining efforts to achieve lasting peace. Only through informed and nuanced understanding can we hope to address these challenges effectively and build a more secure future.